Seek first the kingdom of God. Brian McLaren, the Catholic writer, wrote a wonderful book on learning how to see. And in it, he outlined seven stories we tell ourselves, archetypal stories that we live by. And in doing it, he illustrates that we as humans have a proclivity to live in one story or the other. The stories are this. First story is a story of domination. And in this story, the individual or a group of individuals seeks to dominate another individual, another group of individuals. And in that story, they think that they will seek and receive happiness by their domination. We know that history books are full of this story of domination. It always hasn't worked out terribly well. It certainly does not bring happiness to those who are dominated, and actually doesn't even bring happiness or fulfillment to those who do the dominating. There's story two. Story two is the story of revolution. Usually it follows the story of domination, that those who are dominated get fed up being dominated and revolt against, and usually seek revenge against those who dominated them. And it becomes a second version of a domination story, just the groups have been reversed. Again, our history books are full of this all over the world. When one group takes power, then suppresses and oppresses the other group. The third story that we tell ourselves, that we seek to get happiness from, is the story of purification. That if we just do the right thing, then we will be happy. If we all just do the right thing, then we will receive purpose and happiness. The problem is that we're human. We fail to do the right thing all the time. And as a result, very quickly we realize that because of our fallibility, we can't live this story very well. But we tend to cast those who we think are not living pure, and those ones we cast out. And we tend to keep our own group. Again, it does not last happiness. Then there's the fourth story, which is of isolation. This is a group when we're fed up that other people are interfering with our world. So we push them to the side and we move to isolation. And we say, well, we are the sacred group. We will do this right. It's an additional version to the purification story, but it's always them are the problem. They are the ones, and we scapegoat others, thinking that that will, in fact, produce happiness for us. And again, it does not. We know this to be true. Then you've got the fifth story, which is one of accumulation. If I just have the right stuff, if I have the right thing, if I have the right people, if I wear the right clothes, if I say the right thing, if I accumulate enough, then I will be happy. But we in America live this one to the T. The problem is we now know that it doesn't work either. Oh, a certain amount of any of those things will produce happiness, but ultimately it produces a void of happiness, an emptiness. There's the sixth story, the story of victimization. And the story here is that we tell ourselves, I can't be happy because of what they have done to me. And they can represent a cause, they can represent a group of people or an individual, but it's always that I'm the victim. And therefore I cannot be happy because I've chosen the story of victimhood. And again, there's plenty of evidence to see this in our life. The seventh story is the story of the gospel. The story that God offers us. The story that integrates all those other six stories, and it's the story of love. It's a story that says, love is the only thing that will change and make me completely happy. that my search for anything else will always result in incompleteness and unhappiness. The seventh story attempts to integrate all those 6 stories, not to negate them, but to integrate them into our lives and to choose love. Now, Brian McGuire has this beautiful, wonderful podcast he does. He has this Northern Irish guy who he did this podcast with called Garrett Higgins. Garrett is a Northern Ireland guy. He's one of the foremost guys of conflict resolution and peace. He has this wonderful way of encapsulating this. Yeah, I'm going to imitate his accent for a moment because it's a beautiful accent. He says, we have to be careful what story we tell ourselves. Because the story we tell ourselves is the story we live. But if we want a different story, if we want a different outcome, then we're going to have to learn to tell a different story. And that starts with ourselves. We have to tell our own story to ourselves first. So which story are you going to choose? Because that's the story you will live. One way or the other, you will live the story you tell. So I asked the graduating class, which story do you tell? I don't mean the story you talk out loud. I mean the one you're telling in your head. What's the story you tell of yourself? It's really important to know what story you're telling yourself, because that's the story you will live. These 6 stories are out there, and every one of us find a way somehow to attach ourselves to one of the stories at one point or the other. They come to us, no matter whether we seek them or not. They come to us. And we have to choose the story we tell. And then we have to live that story. Otherwise, the story and the end will always be the same. Now look, I understand that when you got here in 2020, you all got into that story of victimization. After all, you didn't graduate from middle school. You didn't get A. I understand that was hard. Now, there's a possibility that you can continue to live that story and tell that story to yourself. Well, we didn't have the full campus. It was closed off. We didn't even get into the whole building until today. You can say that story. But fortunately, you have chosen not to tell that story. You've chosen to be a different story. I know many of you well, and you've chosen the story of love. And the reason why you've been able to tell that story of love and choose that love is because you've been surrounded by family and friends and faculty that have enfolded you in that story of love. My hope is that you will believe that story of love. That you are valued and that you have gifts. That no one ever tell you that you are not gifted. Every single one of you have a gift. Just like that letter to the Corinthians, Paul told the Corinthians, I tell you tonight, you each and every one of you are gifted. Gifted by God, and your call is to find your story and to share your story. And to share that love with others. Now, one of the people you've got to start to find a way to share the story with, first of all, is your parents. They have enfolded you, and they have sacrificed for you to be here these last 4 years. For some of your parents, that's been an enormous sacrifice. They've given up so much for you. Now, I understand that you don't always get on with your parents. I understand that they don't always do everything perfect. By the way, neither do you. And by the way, you're not always easy to be around either. I know that's a shock. I know. But here's the part that doesn't matter. Choose the story of love. Now, the next group that you need to unfold yourselves in this story are your greater family members. Your immediate family, again, I understand you don't always love your little brothers or bigger brothers or sisters. I get that. And you sometimes may have dominated them, and maybe you've had to have a revolution yourself in the house. I get that. But choose the story of love. Tell them how much you appreciate them. Tell them how much their love means to you. Choose to tell the right story with. Now, it doesn't stop there because, quite frankly, even the thieves and thugs can do that. They can love their family and their friends. See, we call ourselves Catholic Christians. And what we do is we go one step further. We have to include others who are not loved. Those who are on the furthest margins of society. Those who may not have families who have enfolded them in their life. We choose to tell the story of love to them. And we promise to fold them back in to our family. There's a great metaphor I want to just leave you with on this. Just think of it, I know a lot of you aren't bakers. I like to bake bread. And how you bake bread is you fold the outside and you put it in the inside. And you press it down and then the outside becomes the inside and the inside becomes the outside. And you keep doing that. And by doing it, you aerate the whole bread. It's one loaf of bread. The outside becomes the inside becomes the outside. My friends, graduates of 2024, that's what I want you to do. In this one table, we claim to be one body, and we are one humanity in God. I ask you to reach out to those who are furthest in the class. When you go to college, the furthest outside, and to fold them back in. Share and tell and live the story of love. Let those other stories of domination, of revolution, of purification, of isolation, of accumulation, and the story of victimization come and go. Hold on to one story. And live the one story. The story of love. If you do that, our world will be a better place. So please, class of 2024, be the story of love in our world.